Stop. Hello and welcome to Why with Simon Miller. Thank you very much for joining me as always. If you are listening on podcast or audio or iTunes or Spotify, you can also join me live at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Miller Report Rules, or just search for Simon Miller. Look for my stupid wrestling picture, you'll see it. Subscribe, come join the fun. And as ever, thank you very much to everyone that supported me on Patreon this week, patreon.com/Simon316. I'm trying to dedicate more time to my podcasts. I'm trying to buy some new equipment and stuff to make these more interactive and more better. So if you could even just check it out by going to patreon.com/Simon316 and give me $1. There's loads of tiers. Again, you can get t-shirts. You can come on the podcast. You can get a personalized message. You can get a personalized postcard. You can join my Q&A sessions we do once a week. There's loads. So if you ever liked anything I did and you'd like to support in that way, it would be great. If not, just give me a subscribe on my YouTube channel or follow me on Twitter at Simon316 or follow me on Instagram at SimonMiller316. Shout out to Jeremy Brock, who is very nice. He also supported the Super Chat. When you support the Super Chat, you get a hand on the heart because I appreciate it that much. HOH. And like I say, with all these, all my podcasts I do, if you say anything in the Super Chat, I will read it out. I will answer it. Unless it's absolutely crazy, then I won't. But that's probably 1% of the stuff. If you have just stumbled across this podcast or this show on YouTube, it is called Why with Simon Miller. I have a wrestling podcast that goes live every Tuesday/Wednesday called Simon's Pro Wrestling Show. But I wanted to have an outlet where I could just talk about whatever I wanted. It's supposed to be weird and different. Like in the past, we've talked about Aladdin songs and we talked about Game of Thrones and Avengers. Today, we're going to get a little bit more serious because I was going to tweet this, and I thought, well, no, don't do a tweet. Do an episode of it, because there's no real length for these podcasts. Sometimes they go 45 minutes, sometimes they go over an hour, maybe sometimes just go 20. They're just meant to be a bit, not a bit of fun. I just wanted an outlet, like I say. So I'm just going to read you the story, because I was going to put it in the title again, but it's a very British, a very UK-centric story, a bit of news. So I was like, well, some people may not get that, so I don't want to, confuse people, I guess, because the person in question is not, I don't think she's a global star, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong, but I erred on the side of caution. And also, I thought it opens up a good debate anyway. Shout out to Tom Talks Rubbish in the Super Chat. He said, have some money, love all you do. See, look, even with my crazy sound at the start, people are still lovely. I appreciate that, Tom. That's very, very kind of you. I really do. That's really, really nice. But yeah, so the headline is BBC defends Jo Brand over battery acid joke. Now, you need some context on who Jo Brand is. She is we'll call her a controversial comedian over here in the UK. Controversial is probably a bit strong, but she jokes about stuff you shouldn't joke about. She's like South Park, right? But we know what she's doing. The context is there. You're allowed, I just want to point out before we begin as well, you're allowed to be offended by whatever you want. You absolutely are. You're also allowed not to be offended. You are an individual. You are a person. You have your own opinions, your own thoughts, and no one should ever be able to tell you otherwise. So I want to make that clear before we start talking about this. That this is by no means saying there's a right or wrong. This is just me giving an opinion because I'd like to spark debate. So Jo Brand was on a BBC comedy show. I'm just going to read it to you because it's easier. This is from the BBC. The BBC, on the BBC website, has defended Jo Brand against claims she incited violence through comments made during a radio show. The comedian, who was a guest on BBC Radio 4's Hearsay on Tuesday, or Heresy I should say, joked about throwing battery acid at unpleasant characters rather than milkshakes. So this ties into a political thing that's going on over here as well. Basically, Nigel Farage, who's in charge of the Brexit Party, who has some incredibly, what I would define, difficult and problematic views. I don't agree with him in any sense. Every time people see him, someone throws a milkshake at his head, which is good and bad as well. Anyway, the point is, Jo Brand was talking about this and said she agreed. She thought throwing milkshakes on him was ridiculous. I'll keep reading. I'm going too far over the place. Right, so Brexit Party leader Nigel Farage, who was hit by a milkshake last month, we're living in satirical times, said the police need to act. The BBC said the jokes made on Heresy are deliberately provocative, as the title implies. They are not intended to be taken seriously. Jo Brand, speaking after Farage and a number of far-right European election candidates were covered in milkshakes during campaign walkabouts, said, this is the joke, why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid? The comic then went on to immediately make it clear she was joking and criticised the milkshake stunts by saying, that's just me, I'm not going to do it, it's purely a fantasy, but I think milkshakes are pathetic, I honestly do, sorry. Right, so that's the that is the quote. Some of that was from the BBC website, but it's everywhere. You can search the story and you will find it. And something that really just, I just, when it comes to comedy and when it comes to jokes, everything has to be on the table. Everything. I go with Matt Stone and Trey Parker rules. Either everything can be joked about or nothing can be joked about, because otherwise, where do you draw the line? So I'm Jewish, right? If South Park makes a joke about Jewish people, and I don't mind it, but let's say I did mind it, and I go, I don't want you to joke about that, but then they make a joke about Christian people, and I think that's okay, well, there's the issue right there. I don't determine what is funny and what is not. So I think you should be able to joke about anything. On top of that, the fact that you should understand who Jo Brand is and that's her humour, in no world does she think you should go and throw battery acid over Nigel Farage. It's just a quip. So someone says to her, oh, what do you think about all these milkshake throwings? Well, I think it's stupid. Why are you throwing milkshakes? Throw battery acid. Because she clearly looks down on Nigel Farage and thinks he's an absolute, what would you say, bad person. She thinks he's a bad person. So it just worries me. And then Nigel Farage, who has always been an advocate for free speech and, down with political correctness, instantly comes out and says it's terrible, it's incited violence, and the police should get involved. I mean, that's just hypocritical. It is. Again, regardless what your political views are or who you think is right or who you think is wrong, you can't spend half your life talking about, political correctness gone mad and how we can't stop free speech and then say, wait, well, you said something about me. I don't like that. And Nigel Farage is allowed not to like it. He's allowed to tweet it and say Jo Brand's whatever, a bad person. I didn't appreciate it. But you can't then, we got to get the police involved. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And if nothing else, when it's all about context, it's all about intent. And this goes for life in general. I think so in 2019, we're so quick to jump on things as opposed to taking a step back and, again, looking at it in context. It's intent. Intent is everything. That's my big thing. It all depends on where the person is coming from. Now, that doesn't mean the intent doesn't come across wrongly. And again, you have to be held responsible for the things you say. And I really do think there has to be the balance. You're allowed to say whatever the hell you want. You can't shut anybody up because that leads to bad places. But by that same token, you have to, again, hold your hands up and take whatever, results or outcome that may then trigger elsewhere. That's just how it has to be. Now, if somebody said, I genuinely think we should be throwing battery acid over people, I would be appalled by that. Of course I would, because no matter what your political stance is, we shouldn't be, violence should never come into play. I don't want to sound like a hippie, but it's true. Violence doesn't solve anything. It really, 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 really doesn't. And we are living in controversial and in somewhat worrying times, I think, across the world right now, as we kind of get these bigger divides, the right to the left and the liberals to the conservatives and all these things. It was far more politically charged and far more aggressive than ever. But that just means we need to be smarter with these things as we go forward. And if somebody wants to make a joke and somebody wants to poke the bear and somebody wants to have a little bit of fun, again, you just got to take a step back and look at it for what it is. And what happens, and what happened here, is that everyone just posts they just post the quote of Jo Brand and what she says, and they circulate that without the context either side, and without, again, let's say it gets to somewhere where they don't know who Jo Brand is. You have to know who Jo Brand is. Like, I would like to think, and I know I'm on a small platform, just using my own viewpoint, I would like to think if somebody heard a quote from me out of context and they knew my stuff, and hopefully I come across as a genuine guy. That's always my intent. And again, you can think I'm not genuine. Like I say, it's completely up to you. But I would like to think if the quote sounded weird, they would have enough respect for me to go, well, let me go and get the whole situation. Let me go listen to the podcast or the video to actually see what Simon meant, because I don't think he would have meant that. Then you take it away. If you still think I've crossed the line, you are allowed to come at me and you're allowed to say, Simon, that is not cool. Of course you are. But I would never do anything like that because that's not my nature. That's not my makeup. And Jo Brand's humour is stuff like that. If we're going to go back through all of Jo Brand's back catalogue, you'll find a dozen jokes like that. And really, compared to some shock comedians, she's very light. She's very, I can't think of the right word. She's not. I quite like Jo Brand, but she's timid. That's the best word compared to some. Quick shout out to Undead BF Goo. I don't know if I got your name right or not, but I like it. This is what happened with Frankie Boyle. I imagine Frankie Boyle, I don't know much. I know Frankie Boyle, but I don't know about any sort of predicaments he's been in. Or if I have, I've forgotten about them. And again, that's a great comment to bring up because Frankie Boyle is, times 10, I would say, compared to Jo Brand. But the main thing is, again, whether you're left, right, up, down, white, black, Asian, Filipino, Hispanic, French, Italian, whatever. We have to be allowed to make jokes about things. And there has to be a line too, but nobody can determine where that line is. Nobody can be the police of that line because you just don't know. Again, South Park is a great thing to always go back to because you'd never be able to make South Park today. And Matt Parker has come out, Trey Parker always do that. Trey Parker has come out and said you'd never get away with this in 2019. But because we were doing it before the world changed, everyone just accepts it now. And they've made jokes on there that make me audibly gasp. And I go, oh my gosh. But I don't then feel the need to retaliate. I either laugh and sometimes feel guilty for laughing. Of course, sometimes they're the best jokes, right? When they make you laugh in spite of yourself. Or I think, you know what, that's not to my taste. And I move on to something else. And I find it just seems to be happening a lot more recently. And I think the reason why it's so interesting when it comes to comedy, I feel so sorry for people that tuned into this podcast this week because I was meant to be an idiot like I usually am. But hey, that's what this podcast is all about. But when it comes to comedy, which is meant to bring a bit of levity into things and is meant to look at the world politically, satirically, and topically and make jokes about that, we can't stop it with comedy. You know, out of all the genres where these things happened, you can't stop it with comedy. And I want to make it clear, if you've heard those Jo Brand comments right now and you think that she's screwed up, that is perfectly allowed. Again, you're allowed to hold her to task. You're allowed to say, Jo Brand, I don't agree with this. But by that same token, Jo Brand is allowed to make that joke. And when it comes to bringing in the police, that's where I think things get a bit too crazy because we know who Jo Brand is. You know, she's a figure. She has a history. She's not just... If you're just a random person, you say stuff like that, that's different. That's just how the world works. If a random person just makes that kind of thing and is really aggressive with it, you should probably go and check that person out. But Jo Brand is a public figure with a record of doing stuff like this with a fan base. You bring Jo Brand on your show because you expect that kind of stuff. You expect her to say whatever's on her mind and be direct. And you either like that or you don't like that. And I don't know. It just surprised me. I don't know if there's any more in this article that we could read to... obviously, Nigel Farage said this is an incitement of violence and the police need to act, and he did a little, a little thing in there. And then Victoria Corin Mitchell, who I believe is the host, just said, Nigel, I'm genuinely disappointed. We don't agree on everything, but I would totally have had you down as a free speech man, especially when it comes to jokes. But that's the thing, and I get it. Like, of course, it's when the joke is on you, that's always harder to take, and it takes quite a confident and self-assured person to be able to brush that off. And Nigel Farage is allowed to be pissed off. You can't take the context out of it. That is my point. But nobody's going to enjoy having a milkshake thrown on them. So he's probably quite sensitive about that. But at the same time, we can't kill comedy. We can't kill comedy. Whether it's Ricky Gervais and I'm not, I think Ricky Gervais is okay. I prefer his podcast to his stand-up comedy, but obviously he goes in hard. Chris Rock, he can be quite controversial compared to someone like Jerry Seinfeld. But hey, I love Chris Rock and I love Jerry Seinfeld. They both offer me something different, but I know where they're coming from. Like, when anybody makes a joke about a questionable topic, I don't actually think they mean that. Or if I do, I will go and source the clip myself and I'll make my own decisions. What I feel like is happening at the moment is somebody says something out of context and we all jump down their throats and we try and drag them down the mud. My man, Malma Blazovic, still the best name ever. We need to understand each other. Let's avoid another NZ shooting. I bet if we all spoke to each other with understanding and empathy, we would live in peace. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Like that's what it's all about. There's a culture kind of brought about by social media in some sense of, jumping down other people's throats because we now have the ability to do so. We all have our soapbox, and I guess some people don't I don't say they don't respect it. That's not fair. But I think some people are too quick to react. And again, like I said, people like Jo Brand, who we're talking about now, Ricky Gervais, I'm not the biggest fan of their work. And I've heard jokes from both of them. Well, not necessarily Jo Brand, but Ricky Gervais, definitely I've heard jokes from. I'm like, that is not my cup of tea. But that's the reaction that I'm allowed. That's perfectly all right. And Ricky Gervais is allowed to make, those comments as well. And once they're out there, that's when we need to decide what we do with those comments, because the issue is who is in control of all of this stuff. Because you could have the same joke told by two people, and one you find funny and one you don't find funny, because again, it's about intent. It's about what you actually mean. And I was having this conversation with someone else the other day. It sounds worse than it is, but it's not. It was genuinely a random one. And they said to me, if I did X in a relationship, does that count on as cheating? And my first point was, well, the fact you're asking me that, I think, kind of proves your intent is that you know that it is bad. And that's the same thing. If you're in a relationship and you hug, whoever it is, man, woman, whatever, and you hug them in a way that you know is bad, or whatever, you can pick your own topic here. But my point. If you know deep down it's bad and there's something else going on, then your intent is the issue. Whereas if you just hug them to say goodbye, then it doesn't matter. So I don't think we should stop anybody saying stuff like this. Not in the public sphere anyway. Like I say, if I don't know, I need a name. If Terence Lighting Bulb says something, and Terence Lighting Bulb is just a guy we know nothing about, and he threatens to throw battery acid over someone, then yes, probably go have a chat with that person. But, controversial shock comedian Jo Brand, you can slap her on the wrist. You can say she shouldn't have done that. As a member of the general public, you can put your hand up and say, whoa, that ain't cool. But I think we have to understand that it's, it's a joke. And again, who decides what jokes are wrong, right or wrong? That's the other thing. That's the thing that really worries me, because we'll get to a point where somebody will have to be appointed into that role, and I don't necessarily think that's a world that I want to live in. There's loads of shows that I watch that are deliberately over the top. There used to be a show called Wonder Chosen, right? Wonder Chosen, it was on MTV. It was like puppets on acid. It was like Sesame Street, but they'd all taken a bunch of LSD. It was one of the weirdest things that I've ever seen in my life. But I loved it, and I loved it because I couldn't work it out and because it surprised me constantly. Does that have to, it doesn't exist anymore, but does that have to go away? Does stuff like the Book of Mormon have to go away? Because that's what it would have to become. And that worries me. Like, I'm a huge fan of comedy. And Matt, that's why I started this podcast. I started this podcast because I was listening to stuff like, it doesn't really tie into it, but Joe Rogan and Chris D'Elia and the old Ricky Gervais podcasts, and there's so many. And I was just like, the way they approach this format is really fun. It's really exciting to me. Also, I just wanted to, not have my own version of that, but just be able to talk about topics that I wouldn't be able to anywhere else. And then when this cropped up, it just struck a chord. And the best thing about everything I'm saying right now is that you can say, Millie, you're wrong. In my opinion, in my world, I disagree with your point. And that's great. And we can have a debate about it. And like my man says, hopefully we can come to the point in the middle where I can be like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying too. And there are things that we don't want to be said. You don't want them to be said. Racism, anti-Semitism, bigotry, anything like that, which is genuinely inciting hate and is coming from a bad place. Again, it all goes back to intent. All my opinions are always going to go back to intent. We do need to crack down on that stuff. How we do that, though, is I don't have the answer for that. I mean, education would be my big one. I find a lot of people that have those kind of views are ignorant, or they've just been brought up that way. But it's, you can't turn a blind eye to it. You need to be aware of it. But at the same time, these people are going to say those things. And hopefully what we can get to a point in the future is where it's being said less and less. And when someone does say it, we can sit them down and go, dude, what are you talking about? Don't think like that. I don't want to go off on my big hippie trippy stuff because people go nuts. And I know it's not this easy, but it still finds it baffling to me that you can be born here in the UK or you can be born in, I don't know, Africa, and that makes us different people. I understand there's history attached to that, and there's, you can't pretend none of that's happened because it has, and it's really, really important. But just in a purely sort of the shallowest level ever, I will always find it crazy that someone can go, you're all right, but you're not all right just because of your heritage, your ethnicity, your background. It's just nuts to me. We're human beings. We all come in the same, I've said this before, we all come in the same way and we all go out the same way. We all sit in the toilet and do a crap. It sounds ridiculous, but we do. We all get tired. We all wake up. We all have bad days. We all have good days. And if anything, we should all be in this stuff together. But, people get corrupted, money, power. Robert Jackson, my man, always supporting it, always appreciate it. He says, who are your top 5 comedians? That was in the super chat too. See, that's the kind of stuff you can throw in the super chat. It's a great super chat. If you want to use the super chat, please do. That's a great question. My top 5 comedians, in no particular order, and I'll forget someone and get mad. But Jerry Seinfeld would be in there because I love him. Chris Rock would be in there for the same reasons. Richard Pryor would be in there for the same reasons. I used to cite Louis C.K., but after everything that went on, that's just too hard to process. For me, again, that's me. That's something else you're allowed to do. Some people can separate the artist and the person. I can't. When I hear things like that, I gotta push you to one side now. I just do. But hey, I thought I'd bring that up because it ties into the discussion we're having right now. So who would be my other two? I'm trying to think, who would I pay to go and see it? Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Richard Pryor. Oh man, now I need to list the comedians because I need to think. I listen to so much stand-up comedy. Matthew Chappelle mentioned Lee Evans. See, it's weird. I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I used to like Lee Evans, and now I watch him and I don't find it as funny as I once did. I don't want to say I grew out of Lee Evans. That's what assholes say. There's no such thing. Comedy is comedy. But he is a big reason I got into it. There's one, is it Live at Wembley, that is genuinely absolutely hilarious. I can't think of my last two, which is ridiculous because I watched so many. We'll do a top 3 for now, and hopefully my brain will throw one at me. But yeah, definitely Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, and Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor especially is... I don't know how much people watch Richard Pryor now, but Richard Pryor to me in many ways is like it gave birth to what we know as stand-up comedy today. If you watch Richard Pryor, is it Live on the Strip? Oh man, he's just the best. Like, and he's the best. You know, whether he's talking about the zoo or whether he's talking about the time he set himself on fire because he was a drug addict for a while. Or, I mean, my favourite Richard Pryor, well, not my favourite, but the Richard Pryor joke that always comes to my mind when people talk about it is when he talks about, you know, going to jail, and he calls it penitentiary, and, you know, meeting people that have triple life. And he just goes, that means if that guy dies and gets brought back to life, he's going to be sent back to penitentiary. It's his delivery, everything. He is, he's absolutely, I don't want to say changed my life. That's a bit over the top. But yeah, Richard Pryor is he's a hero of mine. Like, I did some stand-up comedy earlier in the year at Stand Up NY in New York, which was awesome because Jerry Seinfeld has played that stage as well. I'm a massive Jerry Seinfeld fan. And yeah, you know, I'm not saying I'm an amazing stand-up comic, but it's something I always wanted to do. And I think I did okay. I was proud of myself. And it all started, you know, when I saw Richard Pryor when I was quite young as well. And you can see elements of Chris Rock in that as well. I don't know whether you count Larry David as a stand-up comedian. He has done stand-up, but he's not, you know, it doesn't really fit into that mold, does he? Really? But in terms of, I guess I'm talking about more comedians than stand-up comedy. Larry David is absolutely, I think Larry David is a genius. Obviously, he's the guy that worked on Seinfeld. Now he works on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Just the way that he sees the world is, it just speaks to me on so many levels. And it's the same with Jerry Seinfeld. Like, Jerry Seinfeld, to me, his comedy is very accessible. He doesn't swear, you know, he doesn't really touch topics that are controversial, but it's the way he tells his jokes and the way he sets himself up. And yeah, it's why I love Seinfeld, the TV series, so much. And the problem with Seinfeld is you got to get through 3 or 4 mediocre seasons before you get to the really good stuff. But you have to get through all of that because they keep doing in-jokes and references back to the past. And they kind of use 3 series to build up, the characters and let you understand what's going on. And it's the same with Curb Your Enthusiasm. Curb Your Enthusiasm gets better and better as it goes. But yeah, those two together. And just Chris Rock. I mean, I've never really liked any of the Chris Rock non-stand-up stuff. Like, his movies have been okay, but, you know, Chris Rock stand-up is, like, Never Scared, and what's the other one called? Oh, it doesn't matter. But basically, his stand-up comedy specials, some of the best, you know, regardless whether he's talking about love or race, obviously he focuses on that a lot. Just everything. Like, in his most recent one, where he's talking, I went to see him live. I went to see him live in the O2. It must have been. It was that show he did where you're not allowed to bring your phones in. You have to put your phones in like this sealable case, which was the worst idea ever because at the end there was just like 18,000 people trying to get these cases unlocked. It was an absolute mess. I understand why he was doing it though. But he just told this joke about people that go to jail. And he's like, you know, if you're a murderer or a rapist and you go to jail and somebody's fucking you in the ass, which obviously is the stereotype when you go to jail, you get him fucked in the ass and you're just a bit like, well, you know, I did rape somebody, I did murder them. And then he talks about a guy going to jail for unpaid parking tickets, getting, fucked in the ass and just be, still makes me laugh. Just being like, man, I should have paid those parking tickets. I love those kind of jokes. It's such a weird joke. There is no build up to it whatsoever. It's just an odd observational thing that he throws in there. And I love it. I love the weirdness. His delivery is second to none. And I love his honesty too. I think the best thing about Chris Rock is, especially again in this latest special that he did, is he talked about how he broke up. His marriage broke up because he had a porn addiction. I didn't know anything about that. And he was so honest with it, and he made it funny, somehow made himself sympathetic, even though he admitted he was the bad guy. So, I think you got to have something special to be able to pull that off. We should throw in Amy Schumer in there as well, actually. I know Amy Schumer, excuse me, is... she seems to be quite the dividing figure as well. But I've watched a lot of her stuff, and again, you want to talk about comedians that push the line. Amy Schumer really, really pushes the line. But I tell you, she does make me laugh, and I actually liked some of the films she's done as well, because I just enjoy that she doesn't give a shit. I enjoy she doesn't give a shit. It's like, I'm Amy Schumer, I'm a woman, I have lady parts, go fuck yourself. That's her whole shtick, and I kind of respect it. Shout out to Daniel Brotherton in the super chat. I like it. People are coming in with their own comedians. My fave comics are Rob Beckett, don't know him to be honest. Jack Whitehall, I know. Bradley Walsh, Ramesh, I can never pronounce his name. I know Ramesh, I can never pronounce his last name. Ramesh Ranganathan, I think it is. He is great. That's a great shout. Keith Lemon. I know a lot of people that like Keith Lemon. I am yet to understand maybe the potential genius behind Keith Lemon. He's always been lost to me. And Chris Ramsey, because I'm a Geordie. That one makes sense. I know Chris Ramsey. It's a good list. Bradley Walsh is good. Bradley Walsh is very easy to watch, I find. I tell you who else who was good. Bob Hoskins, who obviously has passed away now, has this reputation as a very watchable and very nice game show TV host. If you watch his stand-up comedy, he's got more in there than you would expect. Vincent Mileage in the super chat, hand on heart. Hey Simon, just wanted to say your videos have helped me a lot in dark times and helped me get into wrestling. Keep up the good work, Vincent. It's humbling to say the least. You're very, very welcome. I hope you're doing a bit better now because you mentioned the dark times, and I'm glad I can help get you into wrestling. Wrestling's the best escape in the world, dude, because it's the dumbest thing in the world, and I think sometimes people forget that. So. We're just talking about comedians now. I'm just trying to think about other comedians we can probably talk about. I can't remember any. But that's my point, right? That's my point. Everybody that I've talked about so far, at least once in their life, has made a comment that people may roll their eyes at. And that's up to you to decide. And if you don't like it, don't listen to them again. Like Jimmy Carr, man. Jimmy Carr's got the whole one-liner. I don't necessarily think he's my cup of tea. But he says things that make people go, what? And, we understand what he's doing. So it's okay. I'm missing some super chats. Let's go back. My man, Undead FBQ, I think I got it right in the super chat. Craig Campbell and Steve Hughes, YouTube them, thumbs up. All right, done. I'm going to go back through and do all of these again. I'm happy to sit there for hours and listen to stand-up comedy. Billy Connolly is someone else I should give a shout-out as well. I'm pretty sure Billy Connolly smashed America, so we don't need to explain who Billy Connolly is. But yeah, he's awesome. And shout out to Laniana DeBose in the super chat. Always a good supporter. Go and listen to Mitch Hedberg. He was amazing. You will enjoy it. I think I've heard some Mitch Hedberg because I recognize the name. I may see his face and go, oh yeah, Mitch Hedberg. But he will go on the list. Oh, my Google alarm's gone off. Hey, Google, turn off the alarm. That was when I was meant to start this podcast. I'm early. So that's the main thing. But yeah, stand-up comedy, I think this all ties in. Stand-up comedy to me has always been an escape, a way of chilling out, enjoying myself, forgetting about problems and issues and stuff like that. And I know a lot of the jokes that I've enjoyed, have appreciated, have taken me aback, have challenged my own viewpoints and morality, I guess, to a certain degree as well. And I just don't want to get away from that. I just don't. It's a wonderful feeling being able to laugh even though you really shouldn't be laughing. I think that takes a certain amount of skill. Also very differently from someone trying to be a shock jock to be a shock jock, right? I'm not necessarily I'm not into that stuff. I need something that's a bit more hard-hitting, a bit more deep. But that's the beauty, is that, some people, this sounds more disparaging than I mean it to, but, Peter Kay is one of the biggest UK comedians in the world, in terms of UK, I should say. And again, he's okay, I enjoy him, but he doesn't make me feel the same way as somebody else. And that's the point. That's the point. Stuff like Team America. Team America, I remember when I went to see that, long time ago now, still in university. Oh my God. Oh no, just before university. But he, that film, I remember I sat there and I remember two people just got out and walked and left during I can't remember the names of Team America, when the main guy has to give the head of Spotsworth, whatever the hell his name is, he has to give him a blowjob to get back in Team America. And two people behind me just went, nope, and they walked out the cinema. And that's okay, you're allowed to do that. I mean, probably research the movie before you go and see it. But, with The World, I mean, that came out, well, let's look up when it came out, just so that we can know. I would say it's probably 2005 would be my guess, top of my head. But it's, 2004. Oh, wait, so it was before university. But, I don't think you'd be able to get away with that kind of film these days. And in a way, I think that's sad. I love that movie. That movie cracks me up. I mean, I won't say it out loud. I don't want to offend anybody. What's the first song in that movie? If you don't know, just search for it. First song in the movie, Team America. And I remember when they started playing it, and I turned to my friend Trevor Thomas, good guy, back in Australia now, killing it. Got a family, got a great job, he's living the dream. I remember turning to him, and I was just like, okay. It was absolutely brilliant. So, so loads of people in the comments are saying as well, the best comedians are those who challenge you and your perspective on your life. Exactly. And I want to be challenged all the time by my comedy. And if you don't and you just want little jokes, that's fine too. And I'm not saying that Joe Brand challenged our lives with a joke about throwing battery acid on someone. But I think we need to just take it in the context that it was presented before we go too crazy about it. And again, it doesn't mean that she was right to say it. But we don't need to get the police involved. Because we know who Joe Brand is. I'm repeating myself now. Shout out to Daniel Brotherton in the comments. Super chat to say, I love how Jimmy jokes about not paying his taxes. Yeah, see stuff like that. And look, again, if it turns out that he's not paid his taxes, then that joke changes. Then it changes. I don't want to go on about intent again, but it's intent. And it will always be intent. And everything that everybody does in life is about intent. You know deep down whether you're doing it for good, bad, selfish, happy, sad reasons. Of course you do. You have the ability. You have the ability to know that, and you can either choose to embrace it or you can choose to ignore it. Again, all your decisions, and that will have an impact on other people's lives. But let's not take our comedy away from anyone. The other thing I saw, and this one is probably a more divisive topic, I'd imagine. It's all divisive, but I saw that over here in the UK they want to start cigarettes, right? You can't have flashy cigarette packets anymore. And in fact, you can only have health warnings on the front of cigarettes, and they have to be hidden away. They now want to do that with fizzy drinks. They want to take off the colourful wrapping so it doesn't look as appealing to children. And I do understand it, and I do think we have to protect the children and stuff from taking in too much sugar because, again, you want your kids to be healthy. But I really just think that should come down to the parents. I think it should be on the parents' point of view to try and educate. I don't think do we really need to get to the point where we're taking wrappers off fizzy drinks? Again, let me know. You may have a great point of view where you go, actually, Simon, it is good because of X, Y, and Z. And I go, oh man, I never thought of it like that. You've smashed it. You've got it 100% right. But, stuff like that. There's a sugar tax at the moment. You can't, I don't drink fizzy drinks, but I think right now there is a fizzy drink tax. So if you want to get your fizzy drinks in and you run a convenience store or whatever, it's going to cost you some extra money. And obviously then that goes up on the consumer side. And that is that. I think my problem with it is, again, it's not educating people and letting people make the choice for themselves. I understand with a kid you can't do that to a certain point of view, but I'd rather that money was invested into explaining, here's a fizzy drink, here's what it's made of, here's what sugar does to the body, here's what sugar is, here's what a healthy balanced diet is. And then, then you've given them all the facts. And then you go, right, go do whatever the hell you want. I've told you now. I don't know. Oh, excuse me. I don't know. That's just how I see it, but I could be wrong. Doesn't mean I'm right. That's just my gut reaction, my gut feeling to it. And maybe I do need to educate myself more as well. I'm definitely not saying that I know everything. I never want to know everything. I always want to be able to learn more and take more in and get better and try and understand people too. I've said this before on another podcast when it comes to politics. I don't agree with Nigel Farage at all. Zero. It scares me sometimes. Same with people like, Donald Trump. And I mean, there are some people that are way too far in one direction. But if somebody told me that they supported them in a reasonable way, I would want to chat to them to try and figure it out what it was. Because at least there's some respect there. And if it turned out, okay, they're a massive racist, but I don't like you anymore. You're a massive racist. You're a crazy person. So, yeah, That's the other thing. Yeah, where does it end? That's the best question. Going back to the fizzy drinks things, where does it end? Do we put a tax on everything? Do we just take away? I'm just going to block this person in the comments because he's crazy. You know, I don't know. We live in interesting times. I will say that. And the good thing about social media is it has made us more aware. Because I don't. Even though we get to stuff like this, stuff like mental health awareness and things like that are being far more discussed as well. And I think, that's a fair trade, to be completely honest. If you want to take a wrapper off a fizzy drink, but it means that people that are struggling every day can reach out to people and get support, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I think all things considered. Right, I think that's all I got to say about comedy. Out of nowhere, that one. That's not what I expected to talk about today. I'm just gonna look. I'm gonna look through a news site and see if anything else comes up. I don't think so. Everyone else is just talking about how 5G may be about to explode your brains. I hope not. 5G is awesome. I got to trial 5G end of last year. That is ridiculously fast. You won't even need Wi-Fi when 5G comes in, as long as it doesn't burn your brain and, people aren't hacking into your phone and all this other controversy that came out. 5G will change the mobile game. It is damn good. Right. It's kind of a short episode today. I didn't know how long that was going to go. I just wanted to talk about it. But look, thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, go subscribe on iTunes, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, on Acast, on everything. We're all there. I'd love to be able to grow this podcast a bit more. The Pro Wrestling Podcast is smashing it right now, which I really do appreciate. Let's get them all up there. Again, if you like wrestling, why not check out my Pro Wrestling Podcast? If you're listening on audio, though, again, head on over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Miller Report Rules. Shouldn't have called it that, but hey ho, we live and learn. Or just search for Simon Miller, find my wrestling pick. That's me. Give me a subscribe. And again, if you want to support me in other means, patreon.com/Simon316. I'm hoping to do some really cool stuff with this year because I see it growing and that excites me. It's as simple as that. I get passionate about it. The wrestling podcast especially is bigger right now than ever, and it makes me really happy. I love it because I'm passionate and I love this stuff and I love everything I do on What Culture and I love my own channel. I love it all. Again, Twitter, Instagram at Simon316. Thanks so much for joining me. Again, keep an eye on my channel as well. We do other stuff. We'll do a random video tomorrow about something. Who knows what? I've always got some idea. Some of it will always be weird. You don't like it? Have a guess what you can do. You can tell me I don't like it. But thank you to everyone that's joining me. Thank you for anyone that's listening over audio. And yeah, I'll see all your faces soon, as I always do. Now I've got to figure out how to do... stupid OBS. I forgot we're in OBS. I'll figure it out. See ya.